Hi there, everybody. So very glad that you could be with us today. I hope everything is working okay and you can see me and hear me and just be able to understand what I've got to say today. It's just very good to have this electronics, even though sometimes it doesn't work the best, but it's better than not communicating at all. And we can do this even when we're quarantined. So now someday we may get out of quarantine and we'll finish these stories and we'll figure out how to do that then too. So I just hope all of you are enjoying these stories and they can make an impact upon your life. It's good to do that. I want to ask you a question this morning. Got a question to ask you. Do you have any friends that have the name of Isaiah? Do you have any friends that have the name Isaiah? I'll bet you do. I bet some of you have friends that are named Isaiah. Well, that's what we're going to talk about this morning. The title of our story this morning is The Messenger. The Messenger. And it's a story about Isaiah. We're going to find out a lot about Isaiah today. So, the Israelites were in exile in Babylon. And when they were in exile there, God used a prophet by the name of Isaiah to deliver a very special message. Now, if Isaiah is the delivery man, that makes him the postmaster, right? Isaiah could be the postmaster. And you know, our post office here in Burnettsville has lots going on in it. You know, our postmaster delivers not only Christmas packages and letters and cards, but our postmaster delivers pictures of Mickey Mouse too. Isn't that exciting? The postmaster does a lot of things, and they're very friendly too. So to be in exile, did you ever heard that word? To be in exile means you're being forced to live away from your true home. That wouldn't be much fun if you had to live away from your home, would it? That wouldn't be a lot of fun at all. But that's what was happening to the Israelites. They were in exile away from their homeland. For the Israelites, their true home was the promised land. Remember that story about the promised land? The land God promised to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob? God had promised Abraham three different things God had promised Abraham. And those were his family would become a great nation, they would have their own land, and through the nation would come a blessing for the whole wide world. God had promised these three things to Abraham. Those were three pretty good promises, weren't they? Yes, they were. But now that Jerusalem was destroyed and all the Israelites were stuck in Babylon, far away from the promised land, it seemed like none of the promises were ever going to come true. Since they were in exile, they were away from their homeland. Israel was supposed to be a great nation, but now they weren't a nation at all. They had no land. How could a blessing for the whole world come from Israel now? That doesn't make any sense, does it? I can't think about that and how that would work. And what about the special promise God made to King David that one of his family members would sit on the throne of Israel forever? Now there was no throne of Israel at all. God's promises confused the Israelites living in Babylon. They wondered if these promises would still come true, if they could still trust God. God knew how confused they were, so he sent his prophet Isaiah. There's that name pop up again, Isaiah, to give them one of the most important messages in the whole Bible. Is our story over? They ask Isaiah. Is this the end of the story? It isn't the end, Isaiah answered. In fact, just wait until you hear what God is going to do next. Exciting news, some new things he's going to do next. Can you imagine how excited the Israelites were to hear what Isaiah had to say? Come on, Isaiah, tell us, come on. That's what they probably said. The first thing Isaiah said was he told them their time in Babylon wouldn't last forever. Well, that's nice. They wouldn't be in exile forever. 70 years, he said, and then they would be back in their own land. Then Isaiah told them about the Messiah. Messiah means anointed one. Samuel had anointed young David with oil as a sign that he was being set apart by God for a very, very, very special job, to be king of all Israel. And now Isaiah was saying that there was another anointed one. Another one coming. He said a baby would be born, and he would be called Emmanuel, which means God with us. But he'd also have another name too. This baby would rule from King David's family, and he would grow up to rule God's people forever. A forever kind of king, bringing a forever kind of blessing, the blessing for the whole wide world. How excited the Israelites must have been to hear that the story of Israel wasn't over. It was actually just another step, wasn't it? The promises of God would still come true. Israel would return to the promised land. Someone from King David's family would sit on the throne and be king for God's people forever. It turns out the hope of the world wasn't a mighty nation or a big warrior like Goliath or a big army. The hope of the world was a baby. The hope of the world was a baby. Can you guess what that baby's name was? You'll have to stay tuned to find out. The messenger. Wasn't that a great story? That comes from the book of Isaiah. There's a book in the Bible called Isaiah, and it comes from Isaiah chapter 9. I can wait with hope because God knows what I need. That's our everyday truth for today. I can wait with hope because God knows what I need. Now, do you suppose it was hard for the Israelites to trust God's promises? It might have been kind of tough, mightn't it? Might have been difficult because things didn't look so good. It didn't look very good at all. But then it happened. Things changed, and they got out of exile from Babylon. And the three promises that God made were wonderful promises. And God always keeps his promise, doesn't he? He always keeps his promise. What does this story teach us about being patient as we wait on God? What do you think? Well, God at times isn't in a hurry at all. He sometimes waits a long time to fulfill his promises. But we know that if God makes a promise, he's going to keep it. Won't be maybe tomorrow or the next day. But someday, God will keep his promises. So that teaches us. This story tells us and shows us that even after 70 years, he kept his promise to the people of Israel. Didn't he? 70 years they waited. Well, that's a good story. Tomorrow we're going to have another story about an individual. So I hope you can come back and see this story. Now, remember I told you about Camp Tippy? Camp Tippy? Some of you got registered for Camp Tippy, and I'm glad you did. So you will eventually get a box in the next week or two. I'm going to call it an activity box that you can do at home, do with your friends, do with your dad and mom. You can do with your grandpa and grandma. There's going to be all sorts of things in it. I think there's going to be a t-shirt in it. I think it's going to be so many fun things to do in it that you will really, really like it. So I'm glad that you have registered. If you didn't, maybe next year. And remember, if you registered this year, next year you can go to camp and just enjoy being on the lake for a week or 3 or 4 days, however long your camp is. So camp is so much fun, so much fun. And Rebecca up at Camp Tippy would love to see you. She'd really love to see you. So I just hope you have a wonderful day. Have a good day. And remember to wash and wash and wash your hands, right? Wash your hands each and every day, many times a day. And remember, God loves you, and so do I. Bye-bye.